right. So that was a blessing to be able to receive. So I wanted to share a few things with you. We always have these questions, and I don't know why I got these other lights down. I think it was just because we were coming in, because I had the music playing. We're in Tuesday night transformation, and I want to study the book of Job. The book of Job. I want to know why bad things happen to good people. And when those things happen, you know, it's interesting because I feel as if we lose sight of our focus. We lose sight of our relationship with God. We lose sight of all of these things, right? But if anything, Job is the example, the prime example of what it means to go through troubles, trials, and tribulations, and to still trust in the Lord. Now, one of the things that I always want to talk about is how do we equate when we have struggles, when we have issues, who do we talk to, right? So that's why I'm calling this particular text Conversations with God. When we are having issues, we need to have conversations with God. We spend too much time talking to the wrong people about the wrong things, and we should be talking to God at all times. I know I was talking with a friend of mine, and one of my issues that I had was when we talk, it is always to no end, meaning that there is no closure. And if I come with an issue, I need to be able to know that my particular issue is being resolved, right? We can't get that talking to man. We just can't. People can have the best of intentions. We cannot get closure. You know, we'll always be left with some gray area talking to man. So Job went through some issues. He went through a few issues. And here's the thing. We've been teaching this the wrong way because we made it seem as if Satan only came around one time. You know, so what ends up happening in the book of Job, starting at the first chapter, and this morning the kids are like, "Oh, are you reading a report?" I said, "No, I'm reading the Bible. I want them to be able to see it." So as I'm reading, I'm looking at it, right? And so Job, they give his background as being a man that had basically had it all together. But even still yet, him having it all together, he was still yet in a point where he still honored God. And he honored God in such a way that he made sacrifice for his children just in case they mess things up. Good evening, good evening. So when we look at it, you know, his kids like to party, as most of our kids like to party. We're in the book of Job. We're going to walk through and have conversations with God. The entire book, starting chapter 1, we're going to walk through. And it talks about the fact that he had 7 sons, 3 daughters. He had 10 kids. So at this time, this designation, he was considered as fruitful. Bible says, be fruitful and multiply. He was fruitful and he multiplied. So when we look at it, it talks about him having 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, which was 1,000 because each yoke contained 2 oxen, 500 she donkeys, and a great household, so that this man was the greatest of all men of the east, of northern Arabia. So his sons went to each other's houses and they feasted. This is chapter 1, verse 4. And they called for the sisters to come eat and drink. And what would happen is when this would happen, he loved his kids, but he understood his kids. So what he would do is he would make an offering for them. He says, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So he made offering for them, right? When is the last time you really look at, you know, our kids are doing X, Y, and Z. Let me make prayer and supplication not out of desperation, but out of preparation in case they mess up. We do it out of desperation. Lord, touch him before check him before he wreck him. Check him, God. But we need to, just in case things are going good. All right, let me pray for you. Let me pray for you. Just in case something else is going on, right? So there came a time when Satan was walking about and all the sons of God came to present themselves because, believe it or not, Satan, still being a deposed angel, still had access to the outer courts of heaven. So when the angels came to present themselves of God, God asked Satan, he said, where are you coming from? And he says, I'm going to and fro from the earth, walking up and down. Okay? And that's going down into verse 7, chapter 1. And he says, he knew his purpose as the tormentor was to torment the people of God. Amen? We recognize that the role of Satan is not to do anything good on our behalf, but he is a tormentor. That's what he does. He wreaks all manner of havoc, creates all kind of issues. That's what he does. That's what he's known for. He's the accuser of the brethren, right? So when you look at it, he says, well, have you considered my servant Job? And he tells him, he says, listen, there's no one like him. He's upright, and he fears God, and he stays away from evil. And when he begins to look at it, he says, well, I would, but you're protecting him. There are dialogues going on in heaven about your very life and existence every single moment of your life. There's situations that could happen. There's trials and tribulations you could go through that God is having in heaven, and angels are being dispatched to protect you even before you know you're in danger. We pray for safety without even realizing how much danger we're actually in from time to time. Let's be honest. There are, I believe it would have been yesterday, today's Tuesday, we're driving and so many people were swerving on highways, so many people were pulling out of driveways, and I'm looking and I say, God, you're protecting me even without me knowing I'm in danger. Because as I'm driving, something says, slow down, so I'll slow down. And then, pulls right out, right? I saw this meme on Facebook. It says, how dare you pull out driving 7 miles an hour when you saw me going 145? That's me, okay? Don't drive 7 miles an hour in front of me and I'm doing 145 miles an hour. I'm going to get the best that I can get to. So that's the thing that we begin to look at. Good evening. Come on in on this side. Sit down, sit next to mama. There you go. So what ends up happening is there's protections that are coming forth that people are not even realizing are out there. So he says, but you got a hedge of protection around him. You bless the work of his hands, and his substance is increased. So he said, well, this is what I'll do. You can stretch your hand out. If you pull your hand back from him and touch everything he has, he'll curse you to your face. This is the dialogue that's going on. So reason why we're talking about conversations with God is because they're having conversations in heaven about us. So wouldn't it make sense to know what God is saying about you? Wouldn't it make sense that when you're having struggles, trials, and tribulations to know exactly what's going on? So he says, if you pull, he'll curse you to his face. I promise you. If you take away his substance, he'll curse you to his face. He says, okay, everything that he has is now in your power. But don't put your hand on him. Okay? It says, everything he has in your power, only upon himself put not forth your hand. You can take what he has, but don't touch who he is. So, we look at everything, storms come. Anybody else ever had storms in their life? Storms come, issues come, disasters happen. His kids were all partying one day and the corners of the house collapsed and killed all 10 of his kids. A windstorm, thunderstorms, lightning come and kill all his crops. And at that moment, when you begin to look at it, it says in verse 21 or verse 20, everything came and was destroyed. Then Job got up, tore his mantle, shaved his head, fell down upon the ground, and what did he do? He worshiped. Your entire life collapsed around you, and yet and still he worshiped. Can we ever be in that mindset that when all of this stuff is going on, when all hell is breaking loose, that you can still sit there and worship? And he worshiped, and what he said was, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. And the Lord gave, and the Lord have taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In everything at that moment in chapter 1, we see the fact that it says Job did not sin. He hasn't even talked to God, but his faith was so strong that even in the midst of the struggle, even in the midst of the storm, in the midst of death and destruction, in the midst of trial and tribulation, he still yet blessed God. Can you be in a position where you can still yet bless God? Everything gets lost. Now, I don't know about you. I always like to talk about me, okay? Because I've been through some things and I can always see myself in these situations, right? I can always see myself. So I remember I had lost literally everything. You know, I was living destitute. I had lost 80 pounds because I wasn't eating. I was eating once a day, a pack of noodles, and, you know, I had started getting myself in order. And right in the midst of me getting myself in order, I was traveling back here from Illinois. I had left from D.C., and I went to go take care of my mother for a couple of months. But in all actuality, Mama said, come home because you're raggedy right now. I said, well, I'm going to take care of you. She was like, I hear you, because Mama knows, right? So we get to the point where I had begun to accumulate. I had started putting on a little bit more weight. I was eating regularly and everything else. I'm traveling back, got money in my pocket, I got brand new clothes and everything. And this same guy that works at the bus station in Cleveland, Ohio, same guy, in 2001, when we came back up after 9/11 happened, he stole one of my bags. He says, hey, I'll go ahead and put your bag under for you. Now, he's at the bus station. I still have yet to figure out whether or not he works there because he stole my bag, okay? So I'm coming back up here a few years later in 2004, April of 2004. Hey, man, how you doing? Yeah, I'm good. Now, y'all remember, I have a really good memory. I'm like, what's up, man? He says, when we put your bag under for you, I don't want you touching nothing that I got. So I put my bag under. The gate is still up. Guess what? Stole my bag again. I had some beautiful Roberto Cavalli sandals. I had pictures of my kids. I had all of this stuff in there that to me meant that I was getting my life back in order. And right in the midst of me getting everything back in order, it got snatched from me again. I said that God must be working in my life. After I said a few choice words, we got to keep it honest now. All right, I ain't got no reason to lie to you. After that, I said a few choice words, and then I said, you know what? God must be working in my life. He must be doing something. He must be planning something that I'm just not aware of, right? So I got to that moment where Job said, you know, naked I came in and naked I go out. The Lord gave, the Lord took away. That's where this particular, you know, colloquialism comes from. So what we always miss is the second time that the enemy comes to tempt Job. It says, and again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. So the first time, all of his livestock, crops, all of his children, everything that he would have held dear materially or emotionally was taken away from him. The second time in chapter 2, it says that Satan also came with them to present himself to the Lord. See, one of the things you don't understand and we miss out on, and this is something that's really deep, but we got to think about this, right? Even the enemy is still subject to the power of God. I'm going to say that again. When people will say, oh, the devil did this, the devil, even Satan is still under the authority to the power of God. There is nothing above God, okay? So he comes and presents himself because that was his obligatory obligation. He says, and the Lord said to Satan, from where'd you come from? He says, you know what I do, going to and fro on the earth, walking up and down. You know, he gave the same response. He can't lie to God either. You know what I'm doing? You know what I'm out here doing. This is where we make our mistake at, is we get people and we think that, you know, they're going to change where they are. But even Satan says, listen, I can't lie to God. You know where I'm at. You know what I'm doing. So he says, listen, have you considered my servant Job? There's none like him. He's upright. He fears God. And guess what? He still holds his integrity. And even though you moved against him to destroy him without cause, he still held his integrity. And Satan says, yeah, but skin for skin, all men will give, a man will give everything he has for his life. Skin for skin. He says, okay, put your hand forth, you can touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. Lord said, listen, everything he is, now before it was everything he has. Now is everything he is. Everything he is in your hand, but you can't kill him. First time, you can take everything he has, but you can't touch him. Now you can touch him, but you can't kill him. So when we begin to have these conversations with God, we have to put everything in its proper context, right? The proper context is knowing exactly what part of the storm you're in at that moment. Many of us think that when we're just getting into the storm, that's the worst we're ever going to see. But for some of us, the storm is going to be even stronger still, and the issues we're going to face are going to be even greater. Even greater. So Job had experienced great material and emotional loss. He didn't curse God. Now it gets to the point where he ends up with sores and with boils from the sole of his foot to the top of his head. And he would take pieces of pottery, and what he would do is he would scrape himself because he was in that much discomfort, okay? And he sat amongst the ashes. Now, sitting amongst the ashes provided two things. If you have boils, those are filled with liquid. Ashes are dry, so he's attempting to dry out his boils, right? He's in such distress that anything he could do, he'll scrape a boil and try to dry it out, right? Still didn't curse God, right? His wife comes up. It says, how are you maintaining your integrity? Why don't you just curse God and die? And he tells her, you speak like one of the foolish women. What shall we receive good at the hand of God that we shall not receive evil? In all this, did not Job sin with his lips? He did not sin with his lips. Let's go back. Chapter 1. He ends up in a situation where everything material and emotional is taken from him. Satan had control over everything that he has. Chapter 2, everything that he was, his physical appearance, his health. This is a different level. This is a different stressor that he's experiencing. He still can't be killed. Can you imagine losing everything and then having health issues on top of it? Literally, if anything pushes you one direction or another, it would be this. So here come his friends. Here come his friends. He said, they come over there, and when they looked, he was so disfigured from his boils, verse 12, they didn't even see him. And they wept, and they tore, each one of them, their mantle, and they put dust on their head toward heaven. And they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and nobody spoke a word, for they saw his grief was very great. Here's what I want to tell you about being careful who you have conversations with. There are some individuals that have conversations with you, and they don't want to help you. They just want to see what you're going through so they can shed light on how bad their life is not. Correct? So when you begin to look at it, his 3 friends for 7 days sat there next to him, didn't offer any encouragement, didn't say, can we pray for you? Didn't say, can we put something on your boils? Didn't say any of that. They just sat there and looked at him. You're in pain, but there's nothing I can do for you. Jalen, go get a cough drop off my desk, please, and thank you. Bring 2. And you know, many of us have friends like this that they just want to look at us as we're going through. They don't want to help us. Here are his 3 good buddies. They had an appointment to hang out. How many times, if you had an appointment to hang out, you're noticeably going through an issue, and your friends are just sitting there? That's why when I would go through my chemo treatments, And everybody's like, oh, who do you have coming for chemo? I said, me and Maury Povich right there. Because what am I sit there and have somebody just staring at me? I'm asleep. They put that Benadryl in the IV. I hope I don't wake y'all up because I'm asleep. You know, if you've ever had Benadryl in an IV, it is a different kind of beast. I'm here to tell you. Get one to Sister Brenda and get one to me. It is a different kind of beast. So I went through mine, you know, by myself because I didn't want anybody just staring at me. I knew that I had my Bible. I knew I had my phone in case there was an emergency. I had my God, and I had my peace while I was there because that Benadryl, it gives you I cannot speak more highly of the benefits of liquid Benadryl. It will give you a peace that surpasses any level of slumber or sleep that you done had. So, but his friends came and stared at him, right? So finally, he opens his mouth and he cursed the day. He got upset. He started talking about he's upset the day he was born. Why did I have to be born? Let's pay attention to the words. And I encourage you, read the entire 3rd chapter. Because in that 3rd chapter, he's in a position where enough had gotten enough, but what he did not do was he still did not curse God, right? He talks about his struggle. He talks about, because it's okay to be upset when you're going through stuff. I mean, believe me when I tell you, it's okay. If you have questions for God, God, why am I going through this? Why am I dealing with this? Why am I facing this? Why am I going through this struggle? Why am I going through this turmoil? If you have questions, it's okay. You can have questions. If anything, it's what you do with those questions that bring you either to benefit or to detriment. It's what you do with those questions. You bring those questions to God. The entire 3rd chapter is him complaining, but he still did not curse God. Then his friends come in. They dedicate an entire 4th chapter to Eliphaz to begin to talk about, if we essay to commune with thee, will you be grieved? Who can withhold him from speaking? Behold, you have instructed many, and you strengthened the weak hands. Your words have been upholden to those that were failing. He's trying to give him a bit of encouragement or to encourage himself. It says, but now, verse 5, but now it has come upon thee and you faint. If it touches thee, then you are troubled. I like this one a bit, okay? Is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, thy uprightness in the ways? Remember, whoever perished, being innocent, or were their righteous cut off, even as I have seen that they plow iniquity and sow wickedness, reap the same. By the blast of God they perish, and the breath of his nostrils they are consumed. He's going through, and what I consider this entire chapter, I consider this to be a passive-aggressive rant about the humanity of Job. Why do I call it passive-aggressive? Because he's using the words that Job had spoken to so many, and he's using it in a context that is showing, well, I thought you were this, or I thought you were that. Don't you remember when it was somebody else, it was fine, but as soon as it touches you, now you got a trouble. Like we're not supposed to be human. As soon as it touches you, now you want to complain. Oh, don't complain now. It's a passive-aggressive rant, okay? I have issue with that. I like a portion of it because it looks almost like he's preparing to encourage him. And then he drops the boom on him, and it becomes a passive-aggressive rant as to how humanity, people who are human, should not respond if you're so righteous. Anybody ever told you that you shouldn't complain because, oh, you go to church, I thought you had a relationship, I thought you was religious. They won't say you have a relationship because they don't understand. I thought you was religious. Why are you complaining? You supposed to be able to work past that. Ain't you the one to sing, all my good days outweigh my bad days, so I won't complain, but here you are complaining, right? Huh? Still human. I'm still human. If I stub my toe, I say, ouch. If I stub 2 toes, I might say something else. I'm still human. Especially them pinky toes. You stub them pinky toes? Oh, that tests your salvation right there. But understand, we're human. And people who don't understand that we are still yet human, though we strive after a divinity that is exemplified by Christ Jesus, will utilize our humanity to question and downplay God's divinity. They'll use your humanity to downplay God's divinity by saying, I thought you was religious. You told me that God would not cause your foot, that's when they know the Bible, to be dashed against a rock. He would send his angels to encamp around about. Ain't that what you said? I'm human. Job complained, did not curse God. Don't you hate when you get 2 itches at the same time? Did not curse God. Now, he goes on in verse 5 and talks about, call now if there be any that will answer thee, to which of the saints thou turn. He's still going off on him. A man is born into trouble and the sparks fly upward. I would seek God and commit my cause. Finally, he says something that makes some sense. In the middle of your passive aggressive destruction of my spiritual character, you say, I would question God. Okay, so now we get ready to have a conversation with God, and this is where we begin to look at things, and we begin to see exactly what's going on. Now, I want you to read all of this. I want you to take some time, because each one of these particular portions, you have Eliphaz, you have the speech of Eliphaz. Chapter 8, you have the speech of Bildad, and then you have Job's reply. They're not helping him. They're not building him up. Then in chapter 11, you have the speech of Zophar. Everyone's taking their turn to begin to tell him, hey, I thought you were saved. Hey, I thought you were religious. Hey, I thought you believed in God. I thought you were God's favorite. I thought you were chosen. I thought you were anointed. I thought that you thought you were all that and a bag of chips and a quart of water. But here's the thing. When they say that kind of thing to you, understand that you are still yet human. You still have a humanity. If you prick me, I will bleed. I am not God. I strive to the high calling, the mark of Jesus, but I am not Jesus. Even Jesus, when he got pierced in the side, it hurt him. It hurt him because though he was 100% God, his flesh was still 100% man. They did get an opportunity to beat him. They scourged him with a cat of 9 tails till the flesh was cleaved from his back. They punched him in the face with rings to where the flesh and the beard would come off. They put a crown of thorns on his head and pushed the thorns in to where it pierced his skin. But even at that point, because he was still yet 100% God, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But in anticipation, while he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, his personal flesh rose up and said, if there's any other way to allow this cup to pass from before me, but nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. He had a moment of humanity as you would have a moment of humanity, facing insurmountable odds, facing issues, facing emergencies, knowing it's coming, facing tragedy, facing trauma. He had a moment where his humanity, his flesh reared up and he says, I don't want to do this. Just as when Job complained, he says, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to go through this. That shows not that he's supposed to be so deep, so religious, so spiritual. It shows that he's human. You're human. So he begins to dialogue, and we want to be able to skip through. There's a lot of chapters in this, and I want you to really, really read through this entire book because it's a lot of good dialogue. Now, one thing I will share with you, and this is what you have to begin to look at, is this is actually, if I recall, the first book of the Bible written by firsthand account. So this is an ancient text. Now, when you begin to look at everything, they'll say, well, you know, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, were the first 5 books of the Bible. That's true. Here's the issue. This is the first one written by firsthand account. The other ones that were written by Moses were written by divine revelation when God hid Moses in the cleft of the rock. And he says, show me your face. He says, if I show you my face, you will not survive. But what I'll do is I'll show you my hinder parts as I walk past, and I'll cover you, because as God was walking, his glory was so great that no man can look upon the face of God and live. So he hid him, but in the middle of his hiding him, he revealed to him everything from the beginning up until that moment. So because if we recognize that God was the only one there, and he had not even created the earth at that point, then how could somebody record it? It could only be recorded by divine revelation. See, that's how they get you, is they'll say, when you begin to look at things that, well, who could record from the beginning if nobody was there? Divine revelation. The entire Bible was written in such a way that it was written by divine revelation and inspiration by God to men and women of God that were able to transcribe what God had given them, okay? So where is this important at? Where am I going with this? What I want you to begin to do is I want you to begin to think about the conversations you need to have with God. I know that a lot of times as we go through this, there's an entire section of this. Out of all of these chapters is conversations back and forth, banter with his friends. How many times have you felt worse after talking with your friends that you called in order to feel better? How many times have you called your family members and say, "Cuz I just need to talk," and by the time you get finished, you say, "You know what? If I didn't want to jump off the bridge beforehand, now I'm really looking at Onondaga Lake Park Bridge." You know what I mean? That's what people don't seem to understand, right? When you look at it, sometimes who you're conversing with can be more detrimental than the issue that you're going through. So my encouragement to you on this evening is to make sure that you're having a conversation with God. When you're struggling, talk to God. Because everybody's not on the same wavelength to where they can begin to share with you what you need to get back to your appointed place. Everybody's not there. But guess what? It doesn't make them bad people. You know what it makes them? Human, just like you. You can't share everything with everybody. There's things that I share with people that a lot of times I don't share the entire context until it's already happened, because some people, as we're talking, they're not looking to pray for you, they're looking to pray on you. And instead of them praying for you and saying, well, you ask them, "Can you pray for me?" They smile, "Yeah, I can pray for you." Well, they're really praying on you. You have to be very cautious, because everything that glitters is not gold, as my mama used to say, and everything that shows you their teeth is not a friend, okay? You got to be mindful of that. Situation came up today, and Pastor L was talking to me. She says, you got to be careful of such and such a situation, because some people can be sneaky. And I said, "Hey, listen, I've made my peace as a man of God. I've made my peace in that particular situation." She says, "Yeah, but you can't trust everybody." And the context within which she was talking was 100% correct. 100%. There was no gray area. She was saying it because the Bible says that he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor before the Lord, right? So my good thing told me you got to watch certain people. So I got to honor that, because God would not have put my good thing in my life for me to obtain favor, and I don't pay attention. So you have to be careful, because everyone that prays on you, that says they're praying for you, everybody that come up and hug you, they're not your friend. You got to be careful. Sometimes when they hug you, they're looking for the best place to put the knife. Let me see if I can find some soft tissue around here, because you got that armor of God on. You got the helmet of salvation. You got the breastplate of righteousness. You got all that sword and that shield, but your back is unprotected. So maybe if I get close enough to give you a hug, I can slip a little right in that area. So you got to be careful. When you're struggling, the first place you should go is talk to God. And I'm going to encourage this. Even before I talk to my wife, I talk to God if I'm struggling. And the reason being is I'm asking for clarity. Is this something that I should be dealing with, or something I should be letting go? The Apostle Paul, when he was dealing with a thorn in his flesh, says he prayed, and he says 3 times, "Let this thorn be removed." And God told him that my righteousness is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. I'll keep you going. So you have to ask God, should I be dealing with this, or should I be acting like this is a mountain and being cast into the sea? You talk to God. You have conversations with God first. And then as God reveals, you're going to endure this, but you're going to need help. Don't be so, how would I say this? God will reveal to you who is there to help you and who is there to hurt you. That's why you talk to him first. Because everybody who's there, who says they're there to help you, is not there to help you. So he'll reveal to you, this is who you need to talk to. There's been times, my good friend, when he passed away, it brought up all manner of memories. And one of the things, I know that God is an incredible and an awesome God, because when he moved away to Florida, I didn't know that he was back. God revealed to me through a vision and written on a bus schedule for a bus that I've never taken was the exact phone number to give him a call. And guess what? It's the same number he had to the day he died. God will reveal to you, but you got to be willing to see what he's trying to reveal, to receive what he's trying to give you, and listen when he's trying to tell you. So why am I saying that? Because if you're going through struggle, you need to have those conversations with God to help get you to where you need to be. Okay, you really need to. Everybody that says, brother, I'm here for you, sister, I'm here for you, everybody's not there for you. God will reveal, here's who I have sent. Here is your raven that I've sent to feed you. Okay? Here is where you go to receive your manna. Here is where you go to receive refreshing. This is your place of Elam. If you remember, before they got to the promised land, there was a location that many of them wanted to stay, and it was called Elam. The children of Israel got to Elam, and they got comfortable, but it was only meant to refresh them for the remainder of the journey. Here is your Elam for you to be able to find rest and refuge before you go further on into what I have for you. Let God reveal to that. But how can he reveal if you're not talking to him? How can he reveal his plans for you if you're not talking to him? You talk to him over dinner, you talk to him before you go to bed, but are you talking to him when you get up in the morning? Okay, are you talking to him? Now, I know you are, because you be in prayer, you're texting. She catch me a couple of times. And catch me sleeping about 5:20. I'll be getting up from my lunch nap at work. Catch me about 5:28. And my alarm going from 5:30. I was like, oh man, that's my lunch nap. But I know she's talking to God. Are you talking to God when you get up? Are you talking to God during the day? You know, that's the thing that people miss out on, right? Talk to God during the day, you know, just like you talk to your friends during the day. Just like you talk to your boo-boo during the day. Just like you talk to your friend that's actually doing, just like you talk to your friend that you think is a friend. That's what I'm going to say. You cut that out. Don't say that. All I'll say is that's not your friend. That's not your friend. You know, that same friend that as you're talking, they're taking notes. That's how I can say it in such a way. That particular friend is taking notes. And they're taking notes in order to be prepared to take your place. You have to be cautious and careful how you are, who you are, and where you are sharing your struggle. Always be careful of that. You know, that cleanup woman, you know. Yeah, you got to be careful of that cleanup woman. That cleanup woman will clean up all the things you leave behind. We'll take notes. Talk to God. Let God show you, this is who I have sent to be your Elam. Some friends are Elam, okay? But they'll only be revealed as you talk to God about it. Some friends are your Elam. They're your place of refreshing. But only after you talk to God about it. And that's the important thing that we have to begin to look at. Why is it so important to have conversations with God? Because your direction for your next level of your life is going to come from you dialoguing, communicating, and resting on the words that God is going to reveal to you. Because without resting on those words, you're going to try to go about it on your own, and you're going to become frustrated. And then your Bildad and your Eliphaz and your other friend is going to come in, and they're going to start messing with you. They're going to be passive aggressive, they're going to be aggressive, and they're going to be passive. Some of them going to say, oh, I thought you were saved. I thought you was good. I don't even see why you go to church. Is this how you going to be? I don't even see. You mad now? What you so mad for? You big mad or you little mad? You just mad. No, I'm human. So talk to God about that, right? I'm so adamant about you seeking the face of God first and foremost, the hand of God, the wisdom of God prior to making life-changing decisions. Now, some life-changing decisions do not require, well, some decisions, number one, are not life-changing, and some decisions don't require you talking to God because God already told you what to do, right? My classmates, their biggest decision that they ever had to make, I'm trying to slip in, I pulled myself too close to the pulpit. The biggest decision they used to have to make is, should I move to Atlanta? Because you know, my graduating class, half my class lives in Atlanta, the other half live in North Carolina. The rest of us is here wondering like what you did different. You know what I mean? You in an apartment, you was in an apartment here. You gotta move to Atlanta. Man, I got this good job at McDonald's. You work at McDonald's here. So you gotta go to Atlanta and work at McDonald's. McDonald's paying $17 an hour. They paying more than my night job. So I'm wondering about that. You know, so that's the thing. That was the big decision. I'm going to wait on the Lord. I'm going to wait on the Lord. The deep ones, I'm going to wait on the Lord. And what they ended up doing was they made a decision because they got tired of talking, saying, I'm talking to God, knowing they weren't talking to God. They get up, they leave, and they go to Atlanta. And what ends up happening? As soon as they go to Atlanta, they're there 90 days, and they're back here talking about, you know, the Lord said it was time for me to come home. No, Joker, the Lord didn't tell your butt to go. The Lord ain't told you go nowhere. If you go somewhere and you have more stress there than you have here, then God didn't tell you to go there, right? Have conversations with God about your life. If you go somewhere, like I always believe that if I get ready to go somewhere and I don't have a job lined up, because I've made this mistake. I left, went back to Illinois 20 years ago, had a job, didn't have anywhere to stay, didn't have contacts with any family. I'm big, I'm bad, I'm grown, I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and ain't nobody gonna tell me nothing. I get down there and fell flat on my face. Flat on my face. Did not have a what? A conversation with God. Went about it on my own free will and volition. And guess what had to protect me? Me. Because I didn't ask for God to protect me because I didn't talk to him first. I could have kept my tail on my job where I was already in management, was working my way up the ladder, and would have been fine. But here's what I'll tell you. The thing that was necessary was for me to experience that because I know what it's like to be without God, and then I had to learn what it was like to be with God. I learned what it was like when I made decisions without him. I was left to my own devices. I was doing what I thought I was big enough to do, and guess what ended up happening? He moved his hand off of me because whatever was protecting me beforehand, because they, you know, it's not in the Bible where it says that he protects babies, old folks, and fools. That's not in the Bible. Let me share that with you. It's not there. Stop saying the Bible says. The Bible didn't say that. Auntie and them somewhere said that. But it's true that for those that don't know, when you have a destiny on your life, he will protect you until that destiny comes to pass. That's the difference. So he protected me to a point. Once I scoffed at his protection, he pulled his hand back and let me see what he was keeping me from. He was keeping me from death and destruction. He was keeping me from poverty. He was keeping me from hunger. He was keeping me from abject homelessness. He was keeping me from all of these things. He pulled his hand back. You know, it was getting so bad, you know, I said, well, I got this 401k. I thought I was being smart because one thing God did tell me, he says, listen, it's June, pull that 401k out. You leaving your job, don't roll it over, pull it out. 90 days later, the entire market collapsed because of 9/11. Entire market, our entire financial system collapsed. Guess who still had some money left? Guess who didn't know what to do with it? Messed it all up. Thought I was doing something, right? When God speaks to you during your conversation, be willing to listen to the whole dialogue. Make sense? Don't take the bits and pieces that you're comfortable with. Listen to the whole dialogue of God. We'll run off of one statement. God said go, but you didn't listen to where he told you to go, right? God said, you asked, is he the one? And when you didn't get a no, you took that as a yes, and now you're trying to figure out what happened to my life. We need to listen to the entire dialogue about God talking to us when we have these conversations. If you look further on, you'll see Job question God directly, but he was also man enough to wait for his response. Basically, God, how could you let all this happen? You know, I thought I was chosen. I thought, you know, like we talk about, you know, why did they have to die? I thought I was chosen. You know, I thought that my anointing would cover them. I thought that what you had for me would cover them. And God says, where were you when I separated the heavens from the earth? Where were you when I created the seas? Where were you when I created the rock and the ziz and the leviathan? Where were you when I did all of these things? How dare you question me? Job's like, my bad, sir. He was man enough to wait, though, and listen. In our conversations with God, we have to be man enough, we have to be woman enough to listen for the response when God is talking to us. Can't go off half-cocked. Many of us, because we will not wait for the conversations with God to come to pass, we will shoot ourselves in the foot before we even draw our gun. So I like to be able to show you where these statements come from. Cowboys, got the gun on the hip, right? You put your hand on your trigger, you don't pull your gun out, what you gonna shoot? Your foot. You did it. Now you can't go nowhere. We can't shoot ourselves in the foot before we have a chance to draw a gun. We got to listen to the rest of the story. We got to make sure that when we're dialoguing with God, we recognize that he is willing to keep us, to guide us, to direct us. His holy word says, for I know the thoughts that I have towards you. I have thoughts of an expected end, of peace, of prosperity. I have thoughts for you to have good things going on in your life. Not this foolishness that you allowed yourself to get into. I got good things for you. I got thoughts to increase you, to be able to put you in a position. I'm reminded of Abram, who only heard part of what God said, or he heard the whole thing and only went with half of it. He says, get out of your father's house and go to a land that I'm going to show you. Don't take nobody with you. Get out of that house. And the next verse says, and Lot went with him, which meant that he only paid attention to half of the conversation. And when he went there, yes, he was able to prosper a bit, and they accumulated, and Lot accumulated. He lost his wife in the process later on down the line, but they accumulated and they did all of these things, but it got to the point where it was too much because you only listened to half of the conversations. Yes, you got a good job when you went down there, but you still living with Bubby in them. And because you living with Bubby in them, now you're messed up because you're in a position where now y'all bumping heads, okay? And it gets to the point where if you only listen to half of the conversation, now you're like Abram. And Abram says, listen, let there be no strife between me and you. I don't want no beef. Or how they say it nowadays, I don't want no smoke. I don't want no smoke. If you choose where you want to go, if you go left, I'm going to go right. If you go east, I'm going to go west. But please, oh my goodness, get up away from me. That's what it says. Please depart from me. Get up away from me. So it says that Lot chose what looked best for him. He chose this nice looking land down in Sodom and Gomorrah. Nice looking land. We know how that went. Abram at the time started walking. And God began to speak to him because the conversation wasn't over. He says, I didn't tell you to take Lot with you, but now that you've separated yourself and you're back on track, now everywhere that your feet touch, I will give you. Then he was able to inhabit and inherit all of the blessings that God had for him because he listened to the rest of the conversation. You will only prosper when you listen to the rest of the conversation. Sometimes it's saying wait, sometimes it's saying go, but learn the difference and learn that when God is speaking to you, to be able to be in a position to listen to the rest of it, you got to have clear-cut direction. I remember in school, and I don't know who else they did this to, you had a paper and it says put your name on this paper and do nothing else. But you would see people going down the rest and making dog noises and clapping 3 times, but it only said put your name on the paper. Because you did not follow the rest of the instructions, I'm sitting there looking at these jokers like, You look about three fools right now, I promise you, because they're not following the direction. When God is speaking to you, make sure you follow the direction during the middle of the conversation, because then will he be able to prosper you. Then will he be able to prosper you. He can't prosper you if you're not paying attention, because God has no desire to bless a mess. You ain't got to be perfect, but you at least got to be willing to listen. God tells you, hey, listen, there's some things you're doing. You keep doing this, it's not going to work. I'm going to go out and do what I'm going to do. You can't tell me nothing. I'm grown. Okay. Okay, buddy. You grown. You going to be grown and keep bumping your head. So, one of the things I wanted to share with you on that is as you begin to have these conversations with God, I really want you to continue to read the book of Job. I want you to read it. I want you to make that your study and just go through it, because there's so many great things that are contained within it. And it's such a personal introspection. You can find yourself in this. You should be able to find yourself in any one of the holy books, but you should be able to find yourself in this. See areas where you walked away from what God was trying to tell you because you didn't listen to the whole thing. Or something happened and you got discouraged and began to question God. It's okay to question God, but when God starts speaking back to you, be willing to listen. Have your conversation. You know how you have a conversation with God? Through prayer. That's what you do. You pray. Father, show me. I don't have all the flowery words. Look, it's me. I'm messed up. Show me how to get right. He honors that. I told you, when God talks to me the way I talk to other people. If God is talking to me, in my sanctified imagination, because that's how I hear it, God's like, dude, why'd you do that? Because that's how I talk to people. That's my dialogue, my dialect. Dude, what's happening, man? I believe that when God talks to me, and he's talked to me very clearly on more than one occasion, and he makes sure that I'm clearly, fully, unequivocally aware of what it is he has for my life. If I deviate from that, that's on me. When God showed me when I was still running around, and I very well may have been in a drunken stupor, okay? Because I would get off work and I would go to, downtown liquor? I don't even know if it's still there because I don't go downtown. I would get off the bus from Carrier because I had a good Carrier job and no car. Didn't pay attention to the rest of the conversation. And I would get off the bus and the guy, he was no help to me at all. He would have 2 bottles of Parmesan sitting on the counter waiting for me because my bus got downtown at 5:05. He closed at 5 o'clock. He would stay open a little bit extra. He knew I was coming. And he was like, hey, my friend. You're not my friend because you're pushing all of this stuff, but I'm the fool for taking it. I put my $10 on the counter, my $10.70, and he give me back my 30 cents because I give him 11, and I go on about my business. So in the midst of one of these stupors, God began to reveal to me, he says, I have more for you. I have more for you. What are you doing? This is not what I saved you for. And in the midst of that, he showed me by this very small kind of long church wearing this white robe with gold cuffs. And I'm like, what is it you're showing me? And I had a gold sash. I'm like, what is it you're showing me? Because this is not me. Fast forward, so we're going to preach over at True Vine, and I have my white robe, which was the first robe that I bought when I came here, with the gold stole, or the white stole with the gold fringes. And I get over there and I said, God, I should have listened. He says, but had you listened then, imagine where you'd be now, but here you are. God is not the kind of God that holds you hostage. He's not the kind of God that keeps score when you mess up. Wherever you pick back up at is where you pick back up at. He doesn't make you start back at square one. That's why when you look in Luke, the 15th chapter, and it begins to talk about the Father looking for the Son, he didn't make the Son go back and rehearse everything and start at square one, even though he messed up, even though I've messed up, even though you've messed up. We don't start back at square one. What he said was, even when he was in his head dialoguing and saying, Father, I've messed up. I'm not worthy to be considered as your son. Make me as one of your hired servants. The father says, bring me a ring, bring me a robe, bring me some shoes, and kill the fatted calf. My son that was dead is now alive again. It's time for a celebration. God does not make you start back at square one. He celebrates your return. So we just have to be willing and able and ready to listen to the rest of the conversation when we're having it with him so that he can bless us and get us to the destiny that we need to be in. We have to be ready for destiny. I'll tell you honestly, I am ready for destiny. I was so tired of being in a broken situation that when the opportunity for destiny presented itself, I ran full force into it. I said, I'm about to get baptized again, and I surely did, right down in Greater New Testament. I said, I'm about to get back because we didn't have a pool at the Promised Land because we were in the wilderness, as we would call it, a couple of different locations. Everybody don't believe in pools, so they said, we can sprinkle you. Find me a pool, and we're going to get baptized. I got baptized again. I gave my life to God. I married a woman who believed in God and could help me get to that next level of understanding. And then once she got me where she could bring me, then I started bringing her the rest of the way. See, that's how marriage is supposed to work. You bring me to where I can go and let me carry you the rest of the way, because whatever I don't have, you have, and whatever you don't have, I have. We're complementary. Instead of being a 180 and a 180 just making a flat line, we're complementary. Your 47 and my whatever the angle would be, my 53, 43 will complement each other. Your 45, my 45 will complement each other. We make one cohesive, solid, connected, complementary unit. So when I began to give my life more dedicated to the Lord, when I accepted my call of the ministry, I started saying, hey, listen, I appreciate you bringing me to church every Sunday when we were dating. It didn't matter what was going on. You know how church folks are. Don't matter what was going on Friday, Saturday. You better have your butt in church on Sunday. So she would bring me to church. And then when God says, okay, she brought you here so you understand what it is, but now let me show you something. I went over to a couple of churches. I went to one church, and I told you before, the pastor has since gone home to be with the Lord, and he didn't open his Bible, and he talked about his DirecTV and how that's this, and I'm looking for scriptural context because now I'm hungry. Now I'm hungry. God saved me. God showed me destiny, and now I'm hungry. I go over to another church, and I'm like, I'm going to come over here with you, but here's the problem. I still remember we were still running the club together back in the day. We used to do all of this stuff together, and guess what? I don't see any God resting on you. You can put two words together, but I don't see any anointing. I don't feel any oil coming from you, so I said, I can't do it. But then I got hooked into a church. A friend of mine said, I'm going to come bring you to church. And I've told this story before. I said, if you bring me to church, I can promise you I'm probably still going to smell like last night or early morning. So I got in the car, and I'm leaning up against the window because I'm still drunk. And he brought me to church. And I cried from beginning to end because the word of the Lord was such a piercing word. It pierced my very heart. And as it pierced my heart, years of disobedience, years of not listening, years of isolation, years of loneliness began to peel away. And I cried from the beginning of the service to the end of the service. And I gave my life to God at that altar that day. And I haven't looked back. She brought me because that was her job. Now I keep bringing her because that's mine. That's the thing. When there's trials, tribulations, struggles, trauma, stress, strain, it's my responsibility to shoulder that, because prior to me dealing with it, let me talk to God first. Oh, I understand. We're in the middle of something? Cool. Let me go pray real quick. Let me go talk to God, because I want to be prepared. I want to be ready. I want to be able to shoulder whatever burden. God gave me broad shoulders, but he gave them to me to be able to pray. But he also gave me 2 kneecaps to go down on my knees and be able to talk to him and pray and say, Father, I need thee. Oh, how I need thee. Every hour I need thee. So this is what we have to be able to do. Have those conversations with God. Talk to God. Let him show you destiny. Let him show you what he has for you. And I promise you, you'll be blessed. Conversation with God. It makes sense? All right. I wanted to make sure it makes sense. Now, if it didn't make sense, you tell me now. How those songwriters say, don't fool me now. Don't fool me. You make sure it makes sense.
What a moment you have brought me to, such a freedom I found in you. You're the healer who makes all